A new year has started and you might be thinking, this year it's time for a change. I'm sick of not having money.
I need more money. What are we doing here?
And not getting anywhere financially, so this is the year I'm gonna make it happen. I'm gonna double my money this year. Is it possible? Yes, and you don't have to be a single 23-year-old computer engineer with a $200,000 salary to do this. I know because I've done it myself without subsisting on beans only and without having any advanced investing skills. And there's my disclaimer, guys. I'm not a financial advisor or tax consultant. This video is for education and entertainment purposes only. Now, in case you're wondering, is doubling your money easy and most importantly risk-free? It depends. If you have $10, you can grow your money tenfold to $100 easy and risk-free just by not eating out for a month or cutting your own hair. But if we're talking about larger amounts, let's say doubling your money from 10 to 20,000, from 20 to 40,000, or even 50 to 100,000, and you want to do this in 1 year, then this doubling process will come with some effort and risk. Are you ready? So let's start and dive into the 3 must-do steps if you want to double your money this year. And stick with me to the end because I will give you a bonus tip that will keep growing your wealth in the future. Step 1 is portfolio reallocation. Let's break this down. If you want your money working for you instead of just you working for your money, you gotta invest it. But here's one mistake that many people do when they start investing. They pick a couple of stocks and bonds, invest in GICs, or listen to the advice of a financial planner to put 80% of your money into the safest assets possible. Then they leave it and never look at it again. Let's say that you've invested $20,000 at that time, and for some reason you put $10,000 in GICs, $7,000 in bonds, and $3,000 in stocks. You would probably get an A in terms of safety, as with $3,000 or 15% in stocks, it's rather low risk. But how is it doing in terms of return? It's probably hovering around the 4% or so mark. At that rate, how long will it take you to double your money? To answer this question, let's talk about the rule of 72. If you've been investing for a while but wondering, why is it taking my money so long to grow, then here's the answer. The rule of 72 tells you how long it takes to double your money depending on the rate of return of your investments. If your investments earns you a 2% return, divide 72 by 2, and in 36 years, your investment will double. For example, from $20,000 to $40,000. But who has that much time? If your investments earn you 4%, divide 72 by 4, and in 18 years, your $20,000 will double to $40,000. With a 12% rate of return, it would take you only 6 years. And of course, to double your money within just 1 year, the rate of return would need to be a flat 100%. Unlikely, but not impossible. Bitcoin, for example, has returned well over 100% in just a year, and so have some stocks like Nvidia, gaining almost 200% in a year. Now, before you go out there and invest all of your money in the riskiest assets possible, it's very important to understand that in general, a higher return goes hand in hand with a higher risk. Although strictly speaking for Bitcoin, I wouldn't say it's high risk, but rather high volatility, since the price fluctuates quite wildly. As for stocks, you could be buying a stock at $20 at the beginning of the year and see it growing to $40 at the end of the year, but it could also go down to almost nothing and you could lose all of your money. On the other hand, you could also be going too safe by putting too much of your money in low-risk, low-return assets. So in order to double our money within a year, am I saying that you should put all of your money into the highest risk assets?
You're saying basically...
Not at all. But it's definitely a good idea to review your portfolio at the beginning of the year and see whether or not you still have the optimal investment mix and the adequate level of risk. And it's important to do this as early as possible in the year so that your investments have more time to grow. How much risk you should take depends on many factors, among others your financial goals, your income, your age, your time horizon, and how much liquidity you need. That is how fast you need funds to be available to you. A 24-year-old with no dependents, with a relatively stable and high-paying job, can afford taking a higher risk, compared to a 48-year-old working freelance with no emergency cash, 2 kids still in school, and a dependent partner. You see what I mean. When assessing how much risk you want to take, you need to carefully assess the consequences if something were to go wrong with your investments. While some people are taking excessive risk and need to reduce the risk they're taking, some other people could afford increasing their risk a bit. Tell me in the comments which camp you belong to. When I just started working, I made the mistake of taking on too little risk and had practically all of my money in GICs. Only years later, I realized that I was prepared to take on much more risk and reallocated my portfolio. And even until this day, I keep reassessing my portfolio. So while it's unrealistic to expect a return of 100% and 1 to 5% is way too low, there is a middle ground. After assessing your personal risk profile, if you determine that you're willing and able to take on more risk, you can shift your holdings into a bit riskier but higher return assets. One way I did it in the past was to shift most of my holdings into the S&P 500, which returned 10 to 12% each year depending on which time frame you take, and soon after shifting a major portion of my holdings into Bitcoin. Not investment advice, just sharing what I did. Of course, there's the risk of the entire portfolio crashing down, and this is where people lose a lot of money when they panic sell. But I believe that if I hold on in the long run, let's say over 5 years, it will eventually recover and my portfolio will generate a healthy, far above 15% rate of return with a good chance of returning even more within a year. And by the way, I did most of my initial investments on this platform called Wealthsimple. It's one of the best investment platforms for beginners because it's just really so easy to use and there are no trading fees. It's also great for beginners in Bitcoin or crypto in general, and even if you're already on another investment platform, it's a good idea to diversify where you invest your money just in case you know. If you want to try out Wealthsimple, you can get a $25 bonus by using my referral code in the descriptions down below. Back to our money example of $20,000. Say you want to double that money to $40,000 this year. Previously, let's say your portfolio generated an average of 5% in returns. And let's say that now, after you've reallocated your portfolio, your expected average returns are 20%. Calculating backwards, this means that you need to have $34,000 invested. 34,000 times 1.2, a bit more than 40,000. If right now you have $20,000 saved, that means that you need another 14,000. Now, where do you get that money from? Reallocating your portfolio to get a higher return is just one piece of the puzzle. The other two pieces is to add more money to your investments, which you can do with the next 2 steps. Step number 2 is to reinvest your RSB tax refund. This, of course, provided you're investing into your RSB. By putting money into an RSB, you could probably get a tax refund between $2,000 to $10,000 depending on your salary and RSB deductions. The deadline for doing this is the last day of February each year, by the way. So just by doing this at the start of each year or throughout the previous tax year, you can easily get a considerable chunk of money to add to your investments at the beginning of the next year. As a refresher on the RSB is a registered savings plan with the government for the purpose of saving for retirement. It's a tax advantage account, in this case tax deferred, meaning that by contributing amounts to this plan and claiming the contributions, I'll explain in a second, you can reduce your taxable income. Let's say your taxable income is $80,000, and for simplicity, let's just say that your tax rate is around 30%. It's not the actual percentage. You can use online tax calculators to get an estimation. In this example, you would pay about $24,000 in taxes. If, however, you contributed $15,000 to your RSB and claimed the contribution, it would reduce your taxable income by this amount. So you'd pay about $4,500 less in taxes, which you could receive as a cash refund. I'm saying claiming the contributions because technically you could contribute, which means putting money into your RSB, but leave it there to claim in future years to reduce your taxable income in the future. Now, this is for Canada, but if you're elsewhere, it's likely you'll have something similar in your own country. Now, there's this debate about whether or not you should invest in your RSB, and the reason is this. Common advice says that it's better to invest in an RSB now if your current income is relatively high and you're in a high tax bracket, let's say 40%, but you're expecting that in the future, let's say when you retire at 65, you expect your income to be much lower, putting you, for example, in a 25% tax bracket. This way, now you can save taxes by putting money in your RSB, about 40% on each dollar, whereas later on when you withdraw it, you'd only pay 25% in taxes. Vice versa, if your current income is relatively low, say you're paying 25% in taxes, and expect that in the coming years your income will increase to where your tax bracket will be 40% or so, it's more beneficial to wait until your income increases so that you can save more money on taxes later. Now, this is my opinion only. Yes, as a general rule, this is fine. But I would say it's important to look at the details of your personal situation. You might be in a low tax bracket now and think you'll wait 5 years or so until you get promoted and get into a much higher tax bracket and then start contributing to your RSP. And yes, you'll probably save 10 to 15% more in taxes by doing so. But there's also an opportunity cost to this strategy that people rarely talk about. If you contributed to your RSP now and get several $1,000s in refunds now, you'll have a time advantage. You can take that money and reinvest it now. And depending on how it's done, the compounding of those investments could probably outdo the tax savings that you would have realized had you waited until you shifted into a higher tax bracket years later. And the great thing is that you don't even have to do either or. Between not contributing to your RSP at all and maxing it out, there's also the option of contributing a limited amount. Say you have accumulated a $50,000 contribution room. You could, for example, just contribute $15,000 over a tax year and then get a $4,000 to $5,000 tax refund as early as April. The caveat here is, of course, that you reinvest that money as soon as you get it into your newly reallocated portfolio. Now, let's say that you're adding $5,000 from your RSP refund into your portfolio. In our example, we needed $34,000 to grow to $40,000 at 20%. We started out with $20,000 and now added $5,000 from the RSP refund, equals $25,000. So how to get the remaining $9,000 now as soon as possible? Step 3 is to make at least one game-changing move as early as possible in the year. Your investments can only grow so fast. We've established that. One main factor is the rate of return, but the other important ingredient, factor 2, is how much money we add to it. If you're like most people, you might be having a hard time saving money, especially in this economy, and despite the super generous GST, HST holiday tax break. So here's the hard truth. Saving money on a latte or two won't get you anywhere. If you want to uncover more cash and don't have a golden goose, you need to make a game-changing move related to either your income or your expenses or both. In this example, to save $8,000, there are several things you could do to move the needle. Increase your income. By setting a timeline for that promotion and salary raise promised to you 3 years ago and not settling for less than a 10% increase. And if this doesn't work quickly, I mean now, then move to another company. If you've been underpaid all this while and have built up some significant skills in the meantime, you could increase your salary by as much as 20 or even 30% by moving. And don't forget to ask for that sign-on bonus and possibly find a company that also pays out year-end bonuses. But if you say, nah, that's not happening to me this year, then the only other way is to tackle the expense side. And the biggest game-changing moves are those that you don't want to hear but that are effective. Downsize your living space so that you'll pay $2,200 for rent or $26,400 per year instead of $3,000 or $36,000 per year. That alone will save you almost $10,000. Or get rid of that car, sell it, and start using a combination of public transportation and Uber or Lyft. And yes, even though Uber is expensive, as long as you only take about 4 drives per month, it is still way cheaper than owning your own car. And it doesn't have to be forever. Now to the bonus tip. This is something I did and that everyone who cares about growing their money will definitely do, which is to track your net worth to stay motivated. One of the reasons people slack off in their investment journey is that they lose motivation and hope. And that in turn happens when they can't see or can't appreciate all the progress that they've made. Yes, you've probably only invested $100 this month, or your portfolio has only gone up by 2% the past year, and you still have $3,000 in credit card debt and your net assets have barely shifted. Any progress seems so minuscule, and that's because you can't see how far you've come. But by tracking your net worth and reviewing it on a monthly or quarterly basis, you can appreciate your progress, the extra savings you made, the debt you've reduced, and how much further you are on your financial journey. And this will especially become apparent when you track your net worth over the years. It will make you want to grow it even more and put in more effort. A video on how to track your net worth will be coming up later this year, but in the meantime, if you're wondering about this thing called Bitcoin and asking yourself if you're late to the party and if you should do it or not, then watch this video next.